Good morning. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Planning Commission for January 17th to order. If you would, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Yeah, right. All right. The first item on the agenda is the swearing in of our new commissioners and a new commissioner and a returning commissioner. So if you would, please take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I am here to do the oath of office for Mr. DeLesline and Mr. Heap. Please stand. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and the state of Florida, that you are qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state, and that you will faithfully perform at all times the duties of the Planning Commission on which you're now about to enter?
I do.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Very good. Welcome aboard. Welcome and welcome back. All right. I'm a little bit under the weather today. I'm all hopped up on antibiotics and cough medicine, so hopefully we'll be able to get through this.
Kind of like always.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I have a reason for drinking all that cough syrup. So the first thing we have is changes to the agenda. Ms. Tusing, are there changes to the agenda?
Yes, sir. The changes to the agenda are that the minutes have been added for approval from the December 13th, 2018 meeting. And then also item number 4 has a revised site plan that is attached. It added a note, and that's for PDR 1612GR, Lorraine Corners Northeast modification.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Shank, anything from the County Attorney's Office?
No changes.
Thank you very much. All right. The next thing we have, I don't see the approval of minutes, but we'll go ahead and take that.
That was part of the update.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Any changes, modifications, clarifications? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I recommend we approve the minutes.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Ron. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Rutledge, second. Any discussion? Okay, Chair will call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. The next thing is citizen comments. This is the opportunity to come forward and speak on something that is not on today's agenda. If you have a desire to speak on something that is on today's agenda, you'll have an opportunity during when that application is heard. So is there anybody who wishes to come forward and make a comment, again, on something that is not on today's agenda? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing, and I guess we'll get right into the presentations that are scheduled. The first application we have is item number 2. Ms. Tusing, before you do that, we're going to go ahead and swear everybody in who is going to testify. So if you intend to speak today on an application, please rise to be sworn in. If you don't do it now, you'll have to do it later.
Swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which are about to present to the Planning Commission are truthful and accurate.
I do.
Thank you.
Very good. Ms. Tusing, could you read item number 2 into the record?
Yes, item number 2 is PDR 1812ZG PGCI IV, or 4, I guess, LLC, Silverleaf Rezone. It is a quasi-judicial item, and Jamie Schindelwolf is the planner. This is a rezone of approximately 22.78 acres for a total Silverleaf project acreage of 308.67 acres. From the A, General Agriculture, 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, North Central Overlay District. to the PDR Plan Development Residential North Central Overlay Zoning District. It is located on the southwest corner of Silverleaf Avenue and US 301 in Palmetto, and there is a revised general development plan for an additional 24 lots for a total of 732 lots that consist of single-family detached cottage, and single-family semi-detached villages residents. Ms. Schindelwolf is here, as well as the applicant's representatives for presentation.
Okay, and for the record, have there been any ex parte communications regarding this application?
No, sir.
Okay, seeing none identified, we're going to move forward. Ms. Tusing, who's presenting? Is it the applicant or? Okay, if we could please have the applicant. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Rachel Layton. I'm an AICP planner with ZNS Engineering, and I have been sworn. I do have a brief presentation for you today. This project has been ongoing for, 9 years now, and it's been incredibly successful. So as we've worked through all the details of the project, what we've seen is the last time we came in front of you, we asked for 799 units, and now we're going back to 732 because the engineering design showed that we can only accommodate 732 units. So this application adds in the 22.78 acres for a parcel that had been held from the rest of the project but had been in common ownership because we didn't know if we were going to come back for commercial zoning or residential zoning. So due to the success of the overall Silverleaf project, we're here today to talk about changing it to plan development residential and including this with the overall larger Silverleaf project. Oh, the mouse is not working. Oh, there we go. Okay, so where we're located here for the proposed site is the southwest corner of Silverleaf Avenue and US 301. So on this map, I wanted to show where we're adding in the parcel to the larger Silverleaf project. And again, we're here today on behalf of the applicant PGCI IV LC, and we're seeking recommendation for approval of a rezone to plan development residential to general development plan standards with special and specific approvals. And again, it's an expansion of the existing Silverleaf project. And we are 22.78 acres. Development trends for this area include numerous residential neighborhoods, Harrison Ranch to the north, Aberdeen to the west. Can't get the screen to move back to the aerial. There we go. And Kingsfield Lake to the east. There's a commercial shopping center located at the northeast corner of Chin Road and US 301. The site is currently vacant. There are wetlands on the site. We are proposing no impacts to those wetlands. We'll be placing 30-foot wetland buffers around those wetlands to protect them. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with the mouse this morning. Okay, future land use. The property has a future land use category of Res 3, residential 3 dwelling units per acre. As you can see from the future land use map, the adjacent properties are designated Res 3 and UF 3. This, of course, is 3 dwelling units per acre with a net of 6 dwelling units per acre. And because we submitted this before the comprehensive plan changes were made, we do have special approvals that have been part of this project all along. To talk about the first one is projects with gross density over 2 dwelling units per acre and a net density over 3.0 dwelling units per acre is requested, but that's a carryover from the original project. This phase itself is about 1 dwelling unit per acre with the 24 units on 22 acres. The project does meet the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. The current Silverleaf approval rezoned from the property from A to NCO and PDR to NCO with special and specific approvals for 732 units. With the addition of the 22.78 acres, the total project is now approximately 308 acres with a total of 732 dwelling units. The last GDP amendment increased, again, the units to 799, but as we engineered the property, at this point, we have all of our final site plans approved for all of the other phases, and all but one phase has been platted. The maximum number of units for all of those phases that have been designed is 708. So with this 24, we're really staying at the 732, which is what we have approved for concurrency from our original LDA. The applicant elected to reduce the number back from 799 to 732. Planned development residential surrounds the property to the east and west. Planned development mixed use is adjacent to the property to the north. You can see right here at the edge of Harrison Ranch Boulevard where we have the PDMU. And we do have some pockets of agricultural zoning districts still in the neighborhood. Nearby development approvals in the surrounding area include densities from 1.65 to 4.89 dwelling units per acre, so what we're proposing is compatible. Can you go to the next slide for me? Sure. Thank you. Okay, so here, where I'm showing this is, you can see Phase 5 at the southwest corner of the intersection there, but I wanted you to be able to see all of the other phases that have been engineered, so how it ties all together. The general development plan modifies the previously approved GDP with the addition of this 22 acres. This phase of Silverleaf is proposed with an option for 24 residential detached or semi-detached dwelling units. The revised general development plan proposes a gross density of 2.37 units for the entire dwelling units per acre for the entire project. Phase 5 proposes a gross density of 1.05 dwelling units per acre and a net density of 1.69. This range of density allows for a variety of single-family housing products. This variety of housing types is the cornerstone of successful master plan communities and will promote a strong community as encouraged by Comprehensive Plan Policy 2.9.1. Can you go to the next slide? Open space required is 25% for the planned development residential projects. This phase includes 81% of open space, or 18.45 acres. The large amount of open space is partly due to the 7.6 acre stormwater pond that has an FDOT easement on it and 4.53 acres of wetland and upland preservation areas. So we're really, we're connecting back to the existing road network through Silverleaf for this project. We have a 50-foot roadway buffer proposed along US 301, consistent with the North Central overlay requirements. A 100-foot buffer is proposed along Silverleaf Avenue. Utilities are available for connection through the project. The project access is proposed from Silverleaf Avenue via Falling Leaf Court and Rustling Pines Terrace. So these residents will come through the project to the Phase 3A units and into this part of the development. We do have an emergency access provided to Silverleaf Avenue. We've worked closely with staff throughout the process. The request has received a positive staff report. The applicant is in agreement with the stipulations. The proposed project is compatible with development in the area. The project was designed to meet the requirements of the Land Development Code, and it's a logical progression of residential development. We respectfully request recommendation for approval. That concludes my presentation. We do have our engineer and our attorney and our environmental consultant with us here today if you have questions.
Very good. Just one point of clarification. You said the neighborhood still has pockets of agricultural zoning?
Not within Silverleaf, but within the overall
adjacent
area.
properties?
Yes,
Okay.
some of the
Right.
adjacent properties.
Very good. Are there any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Do we have a staff presentation? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Jamie Schindewolf, Planner 1 here at Manatee County. I've been sworn. I'm waiting for my PowerPoint. The applicant did a really good job, though, of explaining the project. I don't have too much to add. I will just go, I don't know if this is going to work. Yeah, okay. So I do just want to kind of point out where this is located in the county overall. So east of I-75, out on 301 north. As stated, this project has been around for a while. It started back in 2010. There's been a lot of revisions to it, a lot of working out what makes sense out there. And they were originally approved, or eventually approved for 799 units. So this does represent a reduction overall. You can see here the project site. There is a cell tower and an eagle's nest located nearby, but they're well outside of the radius for that. Whoop. Maybe. So seeing the overall project site here, you can see a lot of it. I think that this is actually not a completely, is this a completely updated aerial? Yeah, a lot more is built out at this point. And here you can see, you probably can't read it. They are complying with like the North Central overlay, the 50-foot buffer to the roadway, significant open space, a large stormwater pond there. Thank you. So, as stated, the request is simply a rezoning of a relatively small amount compared to the total Silverleaf project acreage. They are in the North Central overlay, and they are requesting up to 24 additional lots, a mix of different possible unit types. Staff mostly sees positives to this rezoning and no negative aspects. It makes sense in the area. It's an expansion of an existing project. Setbacks are compatible with other approved projects. It's a relatively small, currently agricultural parcel, but that doesn't really make a lot of sense where it is to stay in agricultural use. Staff recommends approval with stipulations.
And the stipulations are stipulations that were carried over from the original rezone? Are there, I guess the meat of that question is, are there any new stipulations? I'm sorry, that was special approvals. The stipulations are associated with this parcel. Never mind.
Yes. So special approvals, I mean, they carry over, but they don't really make sense anymore with the new comp plan, so.
And can you clarify, we've got a parcel being added to an existing rezone, and there's information being represented that identifies the criteria for this parcel and for the overall project. Is this, are we to view this as an overall project, like the density? I think adding this parcel reduces the density of the overall community? Or is it a continuation? Ms. Tusing, does that make sense?
This is incorporating all of the previous approvals, 1 through 4, as well as this new acreage. It was it originally supposed to, it was maybe going to be commercial originally, the Silverleaf piece. So yes, you can look at it individually, which some of our analysis did, taking just the 22 acres. But overall, if you notice on the site plan, the entire project is listed, and then Phase 4 is called out separately, so you can see the specifics that are related to Phase 5. So overall, it's 4? Okay, I don't know, whatever phase it is. And that's okay. And you know, and that's what we're doing. If you notice, it is a new zoning number, and we've incorporated existing stipulations as well as new ones. If you look at the stipulations, the ones that are underlined are those that are new, that are added to this project. The ones that are struck through are not relevant, one of them being that this was going to be a commercial development and it is no longer proposed for commercial. The strike-through underline gives you what is new and what is new and, or what is changing.
My question goes to the density. So we're adding land to an existing community at a lower net and gross density, and that the overall community is now at a lower net density and gross density.
Because
that's what I was asking.
The overall was $799 and now it's $732 with more land.
And it's the last phase, so we went from the previous well, the last phase that...
Last phase that we know of.
Yeah.
I don't know if they, want to buy any more land, but...
So, okay, any additional questions for the, for staff?
Just to simplify this, you're downzoning it from a commercial high-intensity use to a residential use, right? I mean, that's basically what's going on.
No, it's an upzoning because it's currently an agriculturally zoned parcel. So there was a question, I guess, maybe for the applicant for a while, like would they maybe go to PDC or PDMU, but they're choosing to go to PDR and make it residential.
Gotcha. Okay. 22 units.
In the concurrency that had been granted for the property did not include this parcel, but it included the units that are going to be used on this parcel. Is that correct?
I believe.
So there's no additional trips necessary, so that we're covered with the concurrency through the previous LDA.
I think Nelson's gonna
Yeah.
clarify.
Nelson Galejano Transportation Planning, and I have been served. Yes, sir. The certificate level of service was initially released for 732 single-family units. It means there are no new trips on the roadway network.
Okay. All right, very good, thank you. Any additional questions for staff?
I have a question.
Mr. Roth?
At the corner of 301 and Silverleaf Avenue, is there a traffic light or a planned traffic light?
I am not sure.
Well, across the way is Harrison Ranch. I think they empty out into the same location.
I am not sure, sir. Sorry.
This is on a state road.
This is on a state road, and yes, and FDOT controls the facility. Yes.
Do you know of any communications with DOT regarding signalizations that come up in any of the discussions? We could probably get some information from the applicant.
I am not aware of any communication, but I can search.
Actually, I'm sorry, I think there is a traffic light there.
Yeah, I don't travel this road enough to know. We'll again address that when the applicant has an opportunity to speak again. Okay, any additional questions for staff? All right, we're going to close that part of the hearing and we're going to open it up for public comment. I have one speaker card. If you could come forward, state your name and that you have been sworn. The speaker card I have is Mr. Dan Young. If you could, please come forward. And again, state your name and that you have been sworn. And I see you have something to present. If you present it, you're going to have to give it to the clerk of the court.
Okay, I'd like to share this with you. I have another smaller section of it. I'd like it back. I can't.
I think if you give it, it becomes property of the.
And I'll just give you the little one that I have. You don't-
Is it the same thing?
It's the big picture.
But the same graphic.
It's my thing is taken from this graphic. Yes.
Is that?
You don't. Well, I thought they might like to look at it. That's all right. Yes, I'm going to put it on the thing here.
He has it.
Yeah, I have a copy too.
Okay. All right, very good.
Now, how do I set this up? Put it over here. There it is. Okay.
Can't see that.
All right.
Yep. Oh, there we go.
Again, Mr. Young, could you please state your name and that you have been sworn?
Yeah, my name's Daniel H. Young. I live at 7215 Broughton Street. I have not been sworn.
Okay. So if there's anybody else who wishes to speak on any application, go ahead and rise to be sworn in. Anybody at all. If you plan on speaking, you'll do it now or you'll do it later.
Well, I was just informed this is the wrong one. I came a little bit late, so I still need to
You're
be
here
sworn.
for Sarah.
Sarah Bay, yeah.
Okay.
How do you feel about this one?
Did I hear you're reducing density?
I'll go ahead and
Go
swear
ahead, let's
you
do the
in.
swearing, yeah. Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to present to the planning commission will be truthful and accurate?
I do.
Thank you.
Excuse me for the,
That was just a test run. So, all right. Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on this application? Again, this is the Silverleaf application. Anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing and move on to I guess it'd be staff closing comment. Is there any discussion amongst the commission? Any clarifications needed? So we'll go ahead and we'll go to staff closing comments. No closing comments, and then applicant rebuttal. And if you could you solve the mystery of the signal at the entrance?
I will do my best.
Okay, thank you.
So with the LDA that was approved for the project, initially, Silverleaf Avenue needed to be constructed, and that's in its final phases so that it will now connect through Old Tampa Road. So that connectivity between the two thoroughfares is coming online here in I'd say the next 30 days. But there were certain turning maneuvers that were required at that intersection with Harrison Ranch Boulevard, Silverleaf Avenue, and US 301. And those were all approved by FDOT and Manatee County and have been constructed and installed. We are not aware of any signalization. There's not any signalization at this time, but when traffic warrants it, FDOT will have to review and approve the traffic signal for that intersection. I hope that answers Mr. Roth's question.
Thank you.
And again, kind of in summary, we're adding this piece to the overall larger general development plan, so we have to modify the overall general development plan and the zoning ordinance. The rezoning really only applies to the parcel that was still, the 22 acres that had the agricultural zoning on it, that had been held and reserved and noticed as potential future commercial use. So I hope that gives a little bit of clarity. And again, we're in support, in agreement with all of the stipulations and the modified stipulations as this has gone back through. Some of those are just a reflection of how code changes have happened and how we review things as a county to clean all of that language up and make sure that we're staying in compliance with everything that's more current in regulations right now. So we appreciate it.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Roth.
Where did you say the 22 acres held in reserve for commercial is?
It's this application in particular at the southwest corner.
Talking about, okay.
So it never did receive any commercial entitlements.
I got it.
But we put in the notice to buyers as one of the stipulations that it could be future commercial, and it was decided to move it ahead as residential development.
Very good.
Thank you.
Does that clarify, Mr. Roth?
Yeah, I was thinking it was the next person. Okay, we're good.
All right. Any questions on the follow-up? Or, I'm sorry, the rebuttal? All right, we're going to close the public hearing, and we're going to go to deliberations. What would be the pleasure of the board, of the commission?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. DeLesline.
I move to recommend approval of PDR 1812ZG PGCI 4 LLC Silverleaf Rezone PLN 1806-0084 based on staff report.
Very good, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Ron, second. Any discussion, deliberation? Seeing none, the chair's going to call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 3, which is the DMB Marina LLC. Ms. Tuzin, can you please read this item into the record?
Yes, good morning. Item number 3 is Plan Amendment 1809, Ordinance 1912. It is which was formerly 1835, DBM Marina LLC, Sarah Bay Development. It is a small-scale map and text amendment. This is a legislative item, and Rosina Leiter is the planner. This is a privately initiated map amendment to the future land use map of the future land use element to designate specific real property from the low-intensity office future land use category, which is 3.79 acres, the residential 3 dwelling units to the acre future land use category, which is 4.89 acres, and the residential 6 residential future land use category, which is 0.13 acres, to the retail, office, residential, which is called ROR, future land use classification for a total of approximately 8.81 acres. The location is 7045 North Tamiami Trail, Sarasota, and it's providing for specific property development conditions in the text of the comprehensive plan to limit the number of residential units and square footage of non-residential uses within the property.
Very good, thank you very much. And for the record, have there been any ex parte communications on this application?
Nope.
Okay, nothing disclosed.
Mr. Chair, I just
Yes,
know,
ma'am.
for the record, though, I applaud you following your procedure. This is legislative, so we don't
Oh, I'm
have
sorry.
ex parte communications.
So you could have talked about it.
Still did.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you for the clarification. Again, this is legislative, and which also means you don't have to be sworn in to provide testimony. All right. Can we have the applicant's presentation? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Shelley Johnson with Ensight. I'm a planner, and I have been sworn in.
Very good. Thank you. Even though it's not necessary.
Yes, well, better to be safe than sorry, I guess. So as this was introduced, this is a request for a small-scale map amendment with an associated text amendment to the future land use. And the property is located on North Tamiami Trail at its intersection with Jungle Way to the north. It's approximately 8.81 acres in size. It's currently vacant. The request is to change the land use designation from the 3 designations that are on the property now: the low-intensity office LOL designation, the RES 3 residential, and RES 6 residential designations, to the retail office residential or ROR designation. The property also has 3 zoning designations on it now: PDO office and residential 3 and residential duplex 4.5. This is the existing future land use, and you can see surrounding properties are largely in the similar future land use categories that of the subject property now: low-intensity office and residential. The surrounding properties are zoned similarly: office, light office, and residential. And the aerial at the bottom, you can see that to the north, south, and east of the property is largely single-family residential, the exception being the properties along the US 41 corridor, which are professional office or medical office. And then across 41 to the west is an existing marina and boat sales facility. Most of the development along the corridor in either north or south is a mix of RV and boat sales, hotels, restaurants, and the subject marina. This is a map of the proposed future land use change, and what I'm trying to show here is the relationship of the ROR designation on the subject property to the nearby ROR designations on properties to the north and south, in particular as the pattern develops along the US 41 corridor. The top image here is of the site itself. This is taken from US 41 looking north-northeast. The lower left image is a view of the US 41 corridor looking north, and the low right image is of the US 41 corridor looking south. The property on the larger panoramic view is the property to the right in that image, and then the property just captures a little corner of the property on the left side of the corridor view south. The 2 images on the left-hand side are the views to the east to the Whitfield Estates subdivision. This is pretty typical of the single-family residential nature of that area. The 2 center images are directly across US 41, the marina and boat sale facility. And then the 2 images to the right, the top image is a view of Jungle Way looking north into the Whitfield subdivision. And the lower right image is of the professional office that's located across Jungle Way and with frontage along US 41. Some additional property information. The property was previously developed as a church facility, which has subsequently been demolished and has been vacant since 2017. There are numerous areas and overlay districts that the property falls into, or at least a portion of it falls into. It's the airport impact area, the historical and archaeological area, the coastal high hazard area, the Whitfield residential overlay, the coastal high hazard area overlay. All of it falls within the coastal evacuation area. The property is also located in the urban core and urban core service area, and this portion of US 41 is a designated urban corridor of Manatee County. Concurrently with this application, the applicant has submitted a rezoning application requesting rezoning to a PDC, a planned development, commercial development. I want to kind of walk you through the potential density and intensity. This is where it gets a little convoluted or or at least it was for me anyway initially. So the top table is representing the existing land use categories and their associated density and commercial intensity potential. And you can see that the maximum density today would be about 38 units on the site, and a maximum square footage of commercial development of just under 138,000 square feet. Under the proposed ROR, the density potential would be 79 units, and the commercial intensity would be almost 384,000 square feet. As I mentioned previously, the property falls into many overlays and area districts, in particular the coastal policies, the coastal areas that are designated within the county. And those policies have several directives that are pretty clear and concise. To minimize the evacuation of a population, to prohibit increased density within the coastal evacuation area and the coastal high hazard area, as well as directing populations away from those areas, and to limit density and intensity within the coastal planning area. As part of our application, we submitted to limit the density on the property to 38 units to match what could happen today under the existing future land use categories. In addition to that, based on our traffic impact study, the staff is recommending an additional limitation on the commercial intensity of the project. And this is really based on what our traffic study found was that there are no adverse long or short-term roadway impacts if the FAR is limited to 0.35. So using Objective 2.14.1 of your comprehensive plan, which allows your staff to establish specific policies that preserve compatibility, public safety issues, et cetera, staff is proposing a condition that would limit the maximum number of residential units on the property to 38 and a maximum of 134,165 square feet of non-residential uses. The applicant has accepted this condition, is fine with it. Essentially, there is no change in intensity or density as it stands today. With regard to compatibility, as conditioned, the density intensity will remain the same as what's currently allowed. Adjacent properties to the west and in close proximity, both north and south, have the ROR designation, and you can clearly see there's a pattern of this happening along the US 41 corridor. The site will be accessed by US 41, which is a 6-lane arterial roadway, minimizing impacts to the surrounding residential area. Commercial uses along the corridor will service nearby residences as well as capture some business from passersby on US 41. And roadway networks, utilities, et cetera, are all available to service the property. Just go over some of the comprehensive plan policies to demonstrate consistency. Policy 2.1.1.4 talks about development in areas with the greatest level of public facility. As conditioned, there is no increase in the demand for water, sewer, schools. There are no transportation impacts. And there's the opportunity to maximize the utilization of existing infrastructure. Policy 2.1.1.6 talks about encouraging infill and redevelopment within the urban service area. Again, this property does fall within the urban service area, and the redevelopment effort would support promoting an attractive redevelopment of the corridor. Policies 2.1.2.4, 2.1.3, and 2.1.4.6 all talk about limiting urban sprawl and encouraging economic development through compatible development and redevelopment. Again, this offers an opportunity for redevelopment of an infill site to promote a compatible development that can service the area. Policy 2.2.1.17 is the retail office residential land use designation. The request is and will be consistent with the density intensity established in the ROR. It is adjacent to an arterial roadway, and it is a logical expansion of the ROR designation along US 41. Objective 2.10.4 is the locational criteria of the comp plan. The property is conveniently located to provide commercial services. It has adequate access and will be convenient for the nearby area. And then the policies, the coastal evacuation area and coastal high hazard area policies, these are the policies within 2.2.2 and 4.3.1. As I've previously talked about, as conditioned, the amendment would limit population, reduce the need for population evacuation, increase the density. It would not increase the density to what would be allowed today. And finally, we have been working with the Whitaker Estates community. We've had 2 meetings, one last spring and then one just a couple of weeks ago. Their primary issues are aesthetics and the uses that would be proposed. We're actively working with them on working out these issues, and believe that these will be a little bit more pertinent at the time of the rezoning hearing. With that, I'll answer any questions that you have.
Very good. And just to clarify again, there's no proposed increase, or this comprehensive plan doesn't propose an increase in density or intensity.
That's correct, with the condition, yes.
It's conditioned that way.
Yes.
Very good. And then you mentioned that there was a rezone application pending. Do you mean that the application's been submitted and it's?
Has been submitted. It's still under review.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any additional questions for the applicant?
Yes.
Mr. Roth.
8 units residential. Are we talking apartments? Are we talking villas?
Well, we're requesting a rezoning to a commercial plan development, so most likely it will be a commercial development of some sort.
That really doesn't answer my question. Is residential going to be on this property, 38 units?
I can't say for sure yes or no, but most likely not. It's still being worked out, so.
Chair, when they get to the commission, do they have, the Board of County Commissioners, do they have to tell them what they're putting?
No, this, again, for clarification, this is the comprehensive plan for ROR. Residential is an allowed use in the ROR, correct?
That's correct.
Among other things?
Yes.
And then your application, your zoning application is going to better define that?
The application will include a schedule of uses that will more clearly define the specific uses that might happen on the project.
Right. So there will be some clarification that travels with the rezone application?
Yes, there will.
Okay. Mr. Rutledge.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think the sensitivity I would have in looking at this is if I was a homeowner there, is you got Jungle Way, you've got a road at Mendez and Montgomery. Are all those points accessible to the site, and would they be maintained?
The Jungle Way is accessible. The Mendez not so much. And the intent of during the rezoning and the site plan that comes forward, you'll see that there is no proposed access from Mendez. So I guess to answer your question, there is an opportunity for an access point from Jungle Way.
And Montgomery then too.
Montgomery is not proposed for an access. Yeah.
And the.
I mean, the intent is to not encroach into the residential areas. So. Yeah.
And the other question is, you had the prerogative, if this were accepted without the modifications, to do about 380,000 square feet of commercial. You're accepting a much lower density, which typically would imply you're not going to get the height, because on 10 acres, you probably can't.
They can't because of the airport.
Well, that was my question. In other words, you have the prerogative to do almost 380,000 feet. You're agreeing to do 100 and something, partially because of design, or you have a specific concept of how the layout would work.
Yes, the 134,000 and change square feet is really based on the design that we're working on for the project now. If you look at the maximum potential, the maximum square footage allowed under the existing land use designation, it's just shy of 138,000 square feet. So we're actually asking for a little bit less than that, and it's all being driven by, what we think we want to do on the site.
Because the corridor change that we made, once density and height and all those things, but this site's not requesting that.
No, not right now. Rezoning will be more specific.
For clarification, is this property directly connected to Montgomery, or is there a parcel that?
There is, and I might have to have our site planner answer that question more specifically for you, if I can.
Okay, thank you. I think it may help in understanding the context of how this parcel, the rights this parcel may have to some of the other of the public rights of way that surround it.
Good morning, Brian Smith with Ensight, representing the applicant. Yes, the answer is there is access potential onto Montgomery. Montgomery runs on the east side. However, it runs through, if you take a look at the aerial, I'm not sure if we can put it back on the screen. It's slide number 2. Mendez, if you take a look to the east side, is where Mendez kind of hits the property. We've allowed, because within our rezoning request, we're doing with a general development plan, so there is actually some detail within that rezone request that will give a little more information. Mendez is running basically and runs right into the property line at the east side, and we've left a right-of-way area open for it, which actually would allow access to Montgomery if the need occurs where the county would like to continue that right of way. But as far as our general development plan, and we're getting into details, is we don't have any proposal right now to access Mendez and or come out onto Montgomery.
Right, and my intent's not to hear the zoning details right now, but the rights granted to this parcel are connections to Mendez, Jungle Way, and is there a parcel of property between Montgomery and this tract, or is it directly connected?
Yes, sir, there is.
So there's no right to connect to Montgomery?
Well, they do have the right to connect to Montgomery through that little sliver of property. It's a little easement, it's a right-of-way easement right there.
Oh, it's a right-of-way easement.
Yes, they do have that access potential there.
Okay. And again, those details will be worked out during the rezone, so, okay. All right, thank you. Any additional questions, Mr. Rutledge?
And again, sensitivity, again, commercial development, truck routing is always the big thing. And so driving a bunch of trucks down Montgomery becomes a sensitive issue. Obviously, you don't want it Menendez, and Jungle is what it is, but I just want to understand that as a commercial development versus residential, that's a sensitivity. I agree with its compatibility. I don't see any particular problem with that. It's just an issue that I would find sensitive to in the future when we looked at how the use was exercised.
And just to let you know, and again, without getting into details, the applicant has spent a great amount of time dealing with compatibility with the existing residential to the east, north, and south, and roadway connections are part of that as well.
And those details will be, I'm sure, a topic of discussion in the future when we hear the rezone. Very good.
Rezone.
Very good. Any additional questions or clarifications from the applicant? Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to go to the staff presentation.
Good morning, Rosina Leider by the staff. The applicant covered many of the aspects of the application. I have a short slide show to clarify. Sorry, it's acting weird, this stuff. Can you move to the next? Okay. As the applicant says, is a text and map amendment to change the future land use category of 8.1 acres that have existing three future land use categories, OL, Res 6, and Res 3, to ROR, and is including a text amendment to limit the number of residential units and the maximum square footage of non-residential uses. Next, please. The site is located in the east side of US 41 and is more or less 1,800 feet north of Whitfield Avenue and doesn't qualify actually for locational criteria. Next. Here is the future land use category, and as you can see, OL is along the area that is adjacent to US 41, and after that, the rest of the areas to the east are Res 3 and this little portion that is the easement to connect to Montgomery Road is Res 6. The site is entirely with the coastal evacuation area, with the coastal planning area, and almost 70% of the site is within the coastal high hazard overlays of the comprehensive plan. That limit the potential to increase the density within any change of future land use category. With the zoning, the site has 3 zonings: PDO, Plan Development Offices, that is in the area that in which the site is OL, RSF3 and RDD 4.5, and also is with the Whitfield Residential Overlay, the Historical and Archaeological Overlay, and with the Airport Impact Overlay area. And here you can see the detail of the site that is surrounded by, to the north by Jungle Way, and there is access to Mendes Road and a potential access to Montgomery Avenue. What is important to understand at this time that we are not analyzing any particular application. We are analyzing the maximum potential of the site for which could be developed already right now, and the maximum potential with this future land use category. The site is within the urban core, with the urban service area, and with the TIF area, and is along of the designated urban corridors that giving them more intensity and density than what is allowed in other areas of the county. The surrounding uses, like the applicant says, to the north is residential, east and south. And to the southwest, there are offices. There is office here. And across the street is a hotel with restaurants, a marina. And a little further is another hotel and the gas station. Next. As staff is taking in consideration that the site is located in an area that is subject to revitalization and redevelopment. The site is adjacent to ROR to the west and is comparable with the trends of development along all the US 41 corridor that is developed principally with the commercial uses. And we are placing a specific development condition to limit the density to the density that is allowed right now, to the overall density that is allowed right now, because there are 3 future land use categories, and we have to do the overall density, and the overall density is 40.3, and that derivate in 38 units that are allowed, the maximum number of units, and also according to the traffic analysis, in order to not have impacts in the operational traffic in the area, the maximum square footage that we are allowed is the 0.35. That is the maximum square footage that could be developed right now under the future land use categories that are in place. And there are existing utilities to support development in the area. Next. As the applicant mentioned, the positive aspect is that the site is adjacent to ROR, existing future land use category, going to have access into an arterial that is part of the condition of the comprehensive plan that says the ROR shall be located close to the arterial, so adjacent to arterials. Miami Trail is developed with commercial and mixed uses, and is in the urban service area that has capacity for, is subject to redevelopment and has capacity for utilities serve the area. And also the change of use right now, the site is vacant, will allow better set urban image of the area and a provide other service to residents in the area and to the traffic along this corridor. The negative aspect is the potential range of uses that has ROR instead the uses that are allowed right now. And the only difference is, like, because the site doesn't meet commercial criteria right now, it's not possible to have commercial uses. But commercial uses are allowed in OL, are allowed in Res 6 and Res 3. But the site doesn't meet commercial criteria. Also, right now, the site could be developed with offices and have the same intensity that staff is placing in there, 0.35. Also, staff is conscious of the impacts that could have any potential development to the residential areas that are adjacent to the east and north and south. And for that reason, the Land Development Code has many ways to analyze the potential uses in the future and also the potential mitigation actions that are related to screening and compatibility, separation, setbacks from the existing residential areas. This is something that has to be analyzed at time of the next application for rezone the site. But there are ways to achieve compatibility according with the proposed uses and establishes better setbacks and establishes a different buffers and screening. And as we said, we are placing a specific related condition that limit the density to the 38 units and limit the maximum square footage to 134,000 something. That is the same amount that could be developed right now. If the site is developed with ROR, the maximum that they can go if they don't apply any of the benefits of the urban corridor is 0.5, that is close to 191 square feet. That is more intense than what the applicant is asking. Staff is recommending adoption of the text and map amendment, and this comply with the regulations related to a small scale amendment. If you have any questions, I'm willing to.
Very, very good. Mr. Roth has a question for you.
In the future use, is it possible for this particular parcel to be a commercial place for a boatyard and boat sales?
Is one of the potential uses that could be over there if the site is rezoned to PDC. If I cannot assure could be any residential use. Could be residential or could be any commercial use.
Specifically asking, the company is DBA Marina. I don't
Yeah.
know if they're a marina or not, but if they wanted to use this property based on
They
what
can
we-
use it for that. It's one of the potential uses that are allowed under PDC.
Okay. All right, any additional questions for staff? Mr. Rutledge.
I struggle a little bit. I see that, this is Old Manatee where some of the houses are on 41 almost, they're right there. And we have this transitional zoning that we've passed, which is this urban corridor development, which is to kind of change that conditioning. And it's very uncomfortable for me to look at this and say, I have no idea what they might put on there, and we're going to give them this open book of zoning. We changed the thing. So you're very comfortable that the change in zoning with the constraints that you put on it, size, number of units, and so forth, is a good solution for kind of mixed zoning and our urban core goals that we have.
At least this is my opinion, because right now the site could be developed with the same amount of square footage and could be developed with office uses that usually could not be intense, but if it is a medical office, for example, could be a lot of traffic all day long, enter and buy, and also the next application is a PDC that has the opportunity to work with the applicant in the mitigation factors. you know, but in the general context, we have to analyze all the potential uses that could be, and all the potential intensity and density that could happen with this comp plan amendment.
And to be clear, that if this were to be approved, it doesn't change the zoning at all. It only changes the
Doesn't
comprehensive.
change the zoning.
So
They
it'll
have
still
to
have
go
the
back.
same zoning, and it'll have to
Same
go through.
zoning, and they have to go back, and gonna be the board decision if they accept this type of application or the type of proposal or no.
And then to make to get a clarification on a point I believe you were making, under the current comprehensive plan designation, future land use, the commercial area in the front could be rezoned to the urban corridor zoning or designation.
Yeah, the situation is that OL doesn't allow commercial uses. And because the site is not with the distance, the maximum distance that is 1,500 feet from the closed collector, cannot put commercial sites over there right now under the future land use categories that are existing.
So,
But if you see the trends along US 41, the majority of the uses are commercial, and from this side to the north, almost all the US 41 corridor is ROR since 1990.
right. And just again, another point of clarification. We talk about urban corridors a lot. Is that a zoning designation?
No, urban corridor is not a zoning designation. It's kind of overlay that provide additional benefits or standards to do something different.
Which
the applicant has the opportunity to develop that with residential and offices and get the benefit.
Which would be more intense?
Which will be more intense. Right now, under the future land use category that they have, they can do the 38 residential units and go to 1.0 floor area ratio.
Right. That's
They're gonna allow 3 times what is proposing with the specific land use condition.
That's kind of my question. What we're doing now would kind of bracket in the density intensity to a lesser degree than if somebody wanted to utilize the urban corridor.
The urban corridor, exactly.
Yeah. So this is
Less
it's broad, but we'll drill down into it with the rezone. But this is the first step in bracketing the intensity and density of the site. Okay, that's the point I wanted to understand.
One more question.
Mr. Roth.
So in the future use, based on this suggestion, is it also possible to do another gas station on that road? 134 acres, 8.8 acres, 134.
It's possible to have another gas station. It's possible to have a Walmart. It's possible.
Thank you.
Let's not go there.
It's not, but it's not what is we are analyzing right now. Is you know.
Got it. We're just talking about the.
Could be a big medical office.
Could be a hospital.
Could be a hospital. No, public and semi-public uses are allowed, but no. It's in the coastal evacuation area. They cannot be a hospital.
Here you go. All right, let's get back into the application. Any additional questions for staff?
Question for Chair.
Yes, sir.
So, based on our chart,
yes, sir,
we're only going to look at the land use feasibility. We're looking at nothing we know that's going to be put on the site.
Good.
That would only be decided by the Board of County Commissioners. Is that correct?
Ms. Shank, could you please provide some guidance on this?
Please.
I
Well,
didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night.
Yeah, the driver of the proposed text amendment is limiting the intensity in terms of square footage for commercial and residential units, and the driver of that is a traffic study. But there are other issues looked at for the text amendment. Obviously, with the policy that allows that text amendment to happen. It says, So in addition to the map change, you can establish specific policies restricting the location and intensity of certain developments in order to preserve and protect neighborhoods from encroachment by incompatible uses and intensities. Ensure adequate provisions of infrastructure and other reasons the Board of County Commissioners may decide warrant a specific area policy. So this is legislative, so if, in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare, the board or the planning commission can ask the applicant, will you agree to a further limitation? And I was reading through these, we have 12 or so of these policies to see what type of limitations we have. Most of it's trip generation. Some of it does relate to types of uses, but it's more in terms of buffering and design. You don't list out all the uses allowed under this stage. You can consider compatibility, but, so I was looking in here to see if there's anything about limiting access on roads in this level, and there isn't. We can't get in that level of detail.
Okay. So to summarize, the comprehensive plan amendment is a very broad look at the rights associated with the property. When we go through the rezone, we'll be able to discuss uses and.
Yeah, the text amendment really goes to infrastructure impacts. Are there any limits that not water capacity, sewer capacity, stormwater? You can limit it that way.
Very good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions for staff? Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to go to the public comment portion of the application. And Mr. Young, I believe this was the application you wanted to speak on. And again, for the record, this is a legislative application, so it's not necessary to be sworn in. So if anybody else wishes to come forward and speak, again, you won't have to be sworn in. Good morning. When you're ready, could you please state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Young. I live at 7215 Broughton Street in Whitfield, and I haven't sworn in. I've just put up a portion of the original 100-year-old map of this area. You'll see the street names are different. I've put in yellow roughly where the site is, just for a little elaboration. I see some of you are familiar with this site. Okay, it used to be a Presbyterian church. It used to be a drive-in church. That's why there was empty land in the back there with trees growing and everything, and there were dirt roads to it, I guess. I wasn't around then, and I wasn't a Presbyterian. You mentioned 2 things, and I'm not going to go into this because I guess our board is going to go into it further. Flooding and, flooding, let me mention that. This is a low area. I would imagine that any development is going to have to raise the level of the land. And I see this being done throughout the county. And I grew up, my father was a surveyor, and I got a degree in geography, so I sort of am sensitive to that. Anytime you raise the level of land in one area, water has to go somewhere, as you know. And you can see Bowleys Creek is very close, and Montgomery, until a few years ago, a good rainstorm would give you about 12 inches of water there. Secondly, you mentioned traffic. You notice, I think the road's incorrect. The Tamiami Trail is different from my map. It's been straightened somewhat. But just after this land is Magellan Drive, and you come to the bridge, and as you turn that corner on the bridge, that's a very popular spot for traffic accidents. I shouldn't say that way because I know a number of people have been killed there, and actually I've known some of them personally. It's a wide street, and that happens. Those 2 things deserve a lot of thought. I hope in making any recommendation, there will be stipulations on the land. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar enough with all the codes and whether it's this, that, or the other thing to say it. I know you have your urban corridor, but if it were developed as something, and I assume the entrance will be coming through Magellan Drive, which is just before the bridge, and it's up like this to get on. I take that from time to time. There's a lot of things to be considered here to see that you get the right plan in. And this is, you're only the planning board, I know, but your recommendation is important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And what I found is many times when there's an applicant that affects the neighbors, the hearing processes are an opportunity to learn the process. So Very good. Is there anybody else who wishes to come forward and speak on this application? Anyone at all? If you would, please come forward and state your name, and again, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Tom Doherty, and I'm with Trinity Commercial Group in Fort Myers, Florida. I've been involved in this property from the beginning, and just in my experience of 40 years in commercial real estate, I just want to say that I'm for the applicant, and I think it's a very compatible property for what they're looking to do. That's all I want to say.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Again, is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to come forward? Anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one else come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing, and we'll go to discussions. I'd like to hear the thoughts of the Planning Commission on this, and after that, we'll go to staff closing comments and deliberation. So what are the thoughts here?
So I struggle with the structure we have, and I think it's a bit of a challenge for everybody because the gentleman just spoke says, I think it's very compatible. Well, he knows something I don't, and that makes it more difficult for me to say this is right. I have to tell you, Mr. Young, thanks for coming forward. I was a rodman, just so you know. So I did a little surveying. It's not that much fun. But the point is that I do think that we have a progression. And the map you showed us is of a certain age and condition and time that don't exist anymore. And so our challenge is to try and change and enhance it in such a way and not be detrimental to those that came kind of before us. So that's a challenge with this kind of site because you have residential all the way to 41 when 41 was a tourist road once a year or something like that. So I think that I put a lot of confidence in our staff. I don't like to say that in front of Ms. Tusing, but I do. Just kidding. I really do see them doing a terrific job. They are demanding of people when they come in. They are executing what I think is a very complicated system because of the codes and lawsuits and so forth. So the thing that I rely on a lot when I see this is I got the anxiety that you have. Is it going to be a boatyard? Is it storage units? It used to be an open park kind of area. But I kind of always lean back on the staff. And when they tell me they've made these constraints, whether they go from 300,000 to 100,000, and they are aware of the traffic issues that we all know about and all the same concerns everybody has, which is traffic, noise, access, and what they used to have and what they're getting. I put that burden kind of on you all to say to us, look, we know it's coming when they get the site plan approval. We're registering all those same concerns Mr. Young raised. Don't forget that we talked about that. And that's kind of what we can do here from this level. So I do think that we do have this challenge to change the urban corridors to something more contemporary, more inviting, and more uplifting for our whole community, which I think you can see in some places like Riverfront and so forth. So I'm going to say that I'm in favor of this, despite my anxieties about what somebody might show up with. But I do think that this is one of the challenges we have. We've got good staff. I mean, the people we have on this group that you can see are all pretty sensitive to that. And I would argue they're in defense of the existing groups that are in place. I mean, we don't just somebody new coming in and say, I want to do this, doesn't change our concerns for them. So I'm going to be in favor of this, despite my anxiety and access issues. I'm concerned about all those neighbors that are so close. But the buffering and the design and access that you designed in the past have given me confidence that we can go to that next step.
Okay, thank you very much. One of the things that we hear a lot about is transition and intensity. Unfortunately, 41 is a very, very intense use, and the residential neighborhoods are real close. There's not a lot of room for transition, and to Mr. Commissioner Rutledge's point, we're going to rely on staff and the applicant to work out something that would be acceptable with regard to a transition if the rezone is approved, or as it goes through the process, if it's approved by the Board of County Commissioners. But are there any other questions, comments, concerns, thoughts on this? I'm sorry, the public comment portion is over. I'm sorry, we have to, and just for clarification, that's one of the very important principles that the Planning Commission does is we follow very strict procedures to protect the county. We're all residents of Manatee County, and we try to operate in a sense that protects the county as a whole and not put personal issues ahead. So, you know, everything we do is to protect the county as a whole. Again, any deliberation, discussions, comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I was also going to read into the record the two criteria there in the comp plan for comp plan amendments, in addition to the overall consistency of the comprehensive plan, expressly states, is the proposed map amendment compatible with the development trends in the area of consideration? And is the proposed map amendment compatible with surrounding uses and densities or intensities?
Okay. All right. Very good. And of course, compatibility is one of the hardest things to measure. So, all right. Any additional comments, or we'll go to staff closing comments? Okay. Seeing nothing, staff closing comments?
No, I don't have anything in addition what I was saying, but I would like to point out that we are not analyzing any particular proposal right now. Mm-hmm. This is the next step, and this is only analyze the maximum potential of the site mm-hmm. with the potential uses that are allowed under ROR. The next step is going to include compatibility with screening and buffers and setbacks and potential uses, particular potential uses that we can recommend that are okay or not with the site.
Okay, very good. And
can I make one other comment, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So one of the things that, and I appreciate what you've done, because when you look at 8 acres and you say that they could do up to 400,000 square feet, as a developer, you typically say, I get 10,000 feet an acre. So you wouldn't get anywhere close to what they have rights to today. So I give you a lot of credit for working with the applicant and bringing that down to a much more accommodating and compatible product line that, whatever it is, it's that level. So I appreciate very much what you've already done for residents around there that maybe they had rights to do otherwise. So thanks for that. And I just wanted to, I appreciate that.
Okay. And Mr. Galeano, we heard from the neighbors concerns regarding traffic. Could you just very briefly, we don't need to go in a lot of detail, briefly explain how traffic, the comprehensive plan, the amendment application that's before us, how traffic's considered in that, and when the appropriate time to hear traffic concerns would be?
Yes, the traffic study has two planning horizons, one short range and long range. The short range is for 5 years, and the long range is for 10 years. Essentially, the traffic study sees and evaluates the suitability of the network with the worst scenario, in this case, retail. And the results are satisfactory. It means there are no impacts on the roadway due to the worst scenario based on the square footage that they propose. It means 135,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. And then during the rezone, more information.
On the next step, we will see in detail what type of accesses and how will be the operations at the accesses, essentially on our roads, because US 41 is a FDOT facility.
I think your mic's off. I see. There you go. And thank you very much. And Mr. Gerstenberger's, Mr. Young also brought up concerns regarding flooding. Again, just very briefly, can you explain what the considerations are during the comprehensive plan amendment, and when the detailed analysis occurs?
Get the overhead zoomed out, please.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. For the record, Thomas Gerstenberger, Public Works Department. I've been sworn. With respect to this particular project area, the vast majority of this project, as identified on this map exhibit, is within the FEMA 100-year floodplain delineation. I would note, though, and actually This particular line right here, which is one of the contour lines associated with the flood stages associated with Bowley's Creek. The floodplain delineation with this area, it's comprised of two different components, one being storm surge and the other being rainfall inundation in association with Bowley's Creek itself. With respect to that particular cross-section right there, cross-section AA from the flood insurance study that is accompanied with our flood insurance rate maps, that particular cross-section, the 100-year base flood elevation is 11.4 feet. I would note a caveat that 11.4 feet is the elevation that's based upon storm surge effect. The 100-year flood stage based on rainfall component only is at 2.4 feet. So as far as this particular project, depending on the intended use, which we've obviously discussed some already, with it being with the intent of a retail use, the requirements as far as elevating the particular any particular structures, any particular buildings, there is provision for those structures to be flood-proofed at a lower elevation below base flood elevation of 11.4 feet. Whereas if this project were to proceed with an intent of residential dwellings, habitable structures, then that requirement would be for the finished floor elevations of the habitable structures to be that 11.4 feet plus an additional foot to meet flood protection elevation. In addition, with respect to the future review, the present review and the future hearing of the general development plan to rezone to this particular project, staff would require and request through the staff report that this project provide a flow reduction requirement of 50% for Bowley's Creek, in addition to floodplain mitigation for the rainfall component of the 100-year floodplain. At this time, I'll be happy to address any further questions or comments that the Planning Commission may have.
Right, just to clarify what you just said, the last statement you made, 50% reduction in discharge, meaning whatever's there today, they're going to have to hold on site 50% of that.
Correct. They would have to provide additional attenuation volume to meet that flow reduction requirement.
And then there's the floodplain mitigation. All of the reduced flow, the 50% reduction in the floodplain mitigation, will be done on the site. Correct.
Yes, those requirements would need to be addressed through on-site stormwater or floodplain mitigation.
And that speaks to the applicant's. Well, at that point, it would be the developer's requirement to have no negative impact to the surrounding neighbors.
Correct.
So,
yes.
Okay.
That would be correct, Mr. Chair.
All right.
And like my favorite saying is, when they finish this work under the new criteria, surrounding neighbors will be better off, not worse off. They're not going to put more water on their property because of elevation. So kind of an old standard was your neighbor built a house there and they raised up the thing and all the water ran on your neighborhood. Mr. Gerstenberger does not let that happen. Correct?
Theoretically. As usual, I would agree with your statements, but I would also point out if you're looking at today's scenario, or even just a little time in the past when this was the Presbyterian Church, there were no stormwater facilities with the Presbyterian Church, which had existed on this site for numerous decades. So with this new intended development and the requirements to meet today's stormwater requirements, today's stormwater code, yes, there would be improvements to the stormwater associated with this particular project.
And for the record, Mr. Gerstenberger has a partner in that. That's the Water Management District. So
yes,
it's not just Tom. All right, very good. Any additional questions for the for staff? Okay, very good. We're going to close staff closing comments, and we'll go to applicant rebuttal.
Just a couple of comments. Shelley Johnson for the record. Well, I want to emphasize that the applicant is very sensitive to the compatibility issue with the existing residential development that's nearby. But I also want to point out that, you know, it's sort of a unique property. It has compatibility with the residential to the east, north, and south, but it also has compatibility with the character and development that's along US 41. And so we recognize that, you know, there has to be a balance between those two things. And just to help maybe Mr. Roth get a little more comfortable with the whole compatibility thing, if you think of the land use amendment process, which is what we're in now, as the first step in addressing compatibility, we have a condition that's being proposed that significantly limits the residential density potential as well as the square footage of commercial on the property. So this is really kind of a first step in addressing compatibility. The next step will be in the details of the rezoning. So, and then my second comment is just a formal apology to the Whitfield subdivision. I realize I was referring to them as the Whitaker development, and that's not what they're called. So, my apologies.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and close the, if there's no questions for the applicant.
Just I would say, Ms. Johnson, we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, I'm sure this won't be the last.
Yeah, right.
We're going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and we'll go to deliberations. Any discussion? If there's no deliberations or discussions, the chair will consider a motion if somebody wishes to make one.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. Based on the evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, the technical support documents, and find the request to be consistent with the Community Planning Act as codified in the applicable portions of Chapter 163, Part 2, Florida statutes, and the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan, I move to recommend adoption of Plan Amendment PA 1809 as recommended by staff.
We have a motion by Mr. Ron. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Rutledge, second. Any additional discussion? Okay. Chair will call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. All right. We have the next application. Item number 4. Lorraine Corners Northeast. Ms. Tusing, can you please read that into the record?
Yes, item number 4 is PDMU 1612 GR Lorraine Corners Northeast. It is a modification of the previously approved site plan. It is in the Lakewood Ranch Park of Commerce, or the owner is the Lakewood Ranch Park of Commerce. Jamie Schindelwolf is the planner and is a quasi-judicial hearing. This is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners in Manatee County, Florida, regarding land development, approving a revised general development plan to decrease the commercial and office space from 121,000 square feet to 50,000 square feet on this particular site, elimination of a potential of 251,000 square feet of commercial and office from the northern parcel, increase the number of residential dwellings from 220 to 254, increase the maximum height for residential uses from 35 feet to 50 feet, reduction of approved setbacks to the south and east, and the addition of an access point on Lorraine Road. It is repealing ordinances in conflict, subject to the stipulations as conditions of approval, setting forth findings, providing for severability, providing a legal description, and providing an effective date. Ms. Schindelwolf is here as well as the applicant's representatives.
Very good. And for the record, have there been any ex parte communications, as this is a quasi-judicial hearing?
Correct.
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, nothing disclosed. All right, we're going to go on to the applicant's presentation. Good morning. If you could, please state your name and that you have been sworn.
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, Dorinda Marvin. I'm a senior certified planner with Grimes, Scoble, Grimes, Hawkins, Gladfelter, and Galvano, and I have been sworn. I have a PowerPoint. I'm almost afraid to use it with all the trouble we have with the mouse today, but might ask Dana to help me out. And I'll just interject for whoever's listening that's in charge of those things. I was out at the City of Holmes Beach, and they have this nice little clicker you hold in your hand. So I have offered before to purchase one. This morning I sent a note to my office and said, buy it. We'll just donate it. So it just makes it a little easier, and we're not all sort of fumbling up here. So
About time.
Thanks for your generosity.
it's a lot easier for me to buy it than
It'll
you guys.
have no
I can
impact on your submission,
I
by
can
the
just
way.
click on my phone,
And
you
please
know.
make sure it's compatible with our use.
I will. So this is a project that some of you who were on the Planning Commission would have seen back in 2016. At the time, Schrader Manatee had several potential projects that were located on State Road 70 in this area, just to the east of Lorraine Road. The problem was that they were sort of in the middle of some land that they owned. And we didn't want to just bring forward those two pieces that were in the middle, leaving everything out. And we really wanted to, as is our practice out in Lakewood Ranch, to bring forward sort of a cohesive plan. And so we did that, but the result of that is that we had to sort of guess at what some of those other uses might be, or who the buyers might come in and what their needs might be. So as I said, it was a rezone at the time to plan development mixed use with a general development plan. And we had commercial, office, multifamily, and we frankly put much more development into that than we thought would likely develop. So while I'm here, next slide, please. While I'm here today to talk to you about some additional multifamily units, I sort of want to tell you what the trade-off there was. Currently built on this site is a self-storage facility of 185,000 square feet, a pet resort of 16,500 square feet, and a fast food restaurant that is either approved or under construction. I believe it's going to be a Taco Bell. And there's, is it there already? Yeah, okay. I need to get out more, don't I? And there's really limited remaining commercial lands. And so in that area fronting along State Road 70, we are reducing that remaining square footage in total for the commercial to 50,000 square feet. In the northwest, if I could have the next, which would be the aerial. In the northwest corner, which you see is sort of separated from the intersection of Lorraine and State Road 70, was a parcel we thought was maybe well suited for apartments, but weren't sure that that was the buyer that we could get. So at the time when the GDP was approved, we had some flexibility. We could have 220 apartments, or we could have 251,000 square feet of commercial and office. So we now have an apartment buyer, someone who has developed here in Manatee County before. They're also a national company that builds apartments throughout the country. And while we had approved 220 units, their site plan calls for 254. So what we are asking for in that change to that general development plan are those additional units, getting rid of the opportunity for any more commercial and office, and reducing the commercial and office on the remainder to really sort of a reasonable of what's left for the land. One of the things that's important to note, because it was a general development plan, there's no concurrency associated with this project. So we were initially asked, well, how much should we trade off for those apartments and sort of what's the equivalency? There was no traffic study associated with this for concurrency purposes. And so there's really not sort of an equal trade there that we were looking at. We just felt that coming in to ask for additional development, we don't have remaining lands for all of the commercial that was approved. It just made sense to modify that number as well. This project for the additional multifamily comes to you with two specific approval requests. I will note in your motion there's another specific approval that was already granted for one of the commercial projects. Because this developer is someone that develops nationwide, and not only do they develop their apartments, they own and manage those in the future, so they have a good sense of what their parking needs are. Our code requires 2.1 parking spaces per unit. What we really do when you look at apartments is you break down sort of number of bedrooms, you look at capacity of those units, and what they have found, and in your package you have a survey of, I believe, 9 of those facilities that are in nearby jurisdictions, and their average was about 1.76. and those are at sort of at full capacity. So what they have asked for, and they have justified in their request to you, is a reduction from 2.1 to 1.8. This project is in the watershed, and so that reduction of impervious surface is a policy that we are supposed to find ways to comply with, and that reduction of parking is one of the best ways to do that. In addition, at the time, we only asked for 35, which is the maximum height that you can have in a residential project without bringing forward specific building design. Now that there is a user and they have a specific building design, and I have some elevations that are in your package, but we can put them up here as well. There are 3-story buildings and 4-story buildings. Can you move to the next slide for me? Thanks. 3-story and 4-story. The 3-story buildings will be along the exterior. Those are 39 feet. The 4-story buildings are 50 feet. They are located predominantly in the interior of the project, adjacent to the non-residential area and the approved commercial project directly to the south. There's one 4-story building that is adjacent to 59th, which is the road along the north, but it's oriented with its side to the roadway so that you don't have that same visual impact. I did want to note for you, if when someone is ready to make a motion, there was one typo in the motion in the parenthetical and the project number. The first parenthetical shows it as a Z, which would indicate this is a rezone. It should actually be GR, so the general, which is being revised. I do have with me Mr. John Foley, who is the civil engineer for this project. He's also working with this particular buyer, and Mr. Bill Shallcross, who's with Pacern, who is the contract purchaser here. And we'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Ms. Marvin, with regard to the parking, is parking just general parking, or is it assigned parking, or is it a mixture?
I would have to ask Mr. Shallcross to address that for you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
I have several, but go ahead and answer that question first, if you would.
And Mr. Shallcross, could you state your name and that you have been sworn?
I will. I'm William Shallcross with Pacern Development, and I have been sworn. Parking is very critical to the success of our projects. We do not assign parking spaces. It allows more of an ebb and flow for people to find a space that if there maybe is not one available closer to their unit. We do have what we call tuck-under garages, and we have freestanding garages which are rentable by residents.
Okay, so it's a combination.
It is a combination.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And as is important for count is distribution. So we pay very close attention to having the parking spaces proximate to the number of units in each building.
Right, okay. And with regard to parking, is the basis, I didn't have an opportunity to delve deep into the request for the reduction in parking, but is the basis the square footage of every unit and the number of folks that may reside in each unit? Was that the basis of the parking reduction?
I'm not sure that I understand.
Ms. Grimes, your letter that...
Is it by beds or by square footage?
It's by bedrooms. That's the way we figure it.
So again, Ms. Marvin, the letter you provided in the application package, if there were a smaller unit, the reduction in parking would be based on the fact that there'd be fewer people living there and less likely to require multiple
And thank you for that correction. Did you catch yourself when you called me Miss Grimes?
No, I didn't.
I mean, well, I would love to be a Grimes.
Come on.
For many reasons, yeah.
I blame the cough syrup.
Another shot.
Yeah.
And this was prepared by a professional planner that does work for Pacern. I believe the analysis in part is based on number of bedrooms, not necessarily square footage, because I think number of bedrooms is really a better indicator.
All right.
So does that mean there's 2 people in each bedroom?
I don't think we can.
That's not the application. That's not the
Hey,
application.
we're not here to judge, so.
Thank you.
That was the previous hearing.
I have a couple
All right,
questions.
Mr. Rutledge.
So forgive me, but this analysis that you did, this is based on your experience as an operator?
That is correct.
And how many units are in that collection that your analysis incorporates?
There are, if I could answer for that, Mr. Rutledge, and so this was not, I'm testifying as to what's in the application. There were 9 different projects that are located in the state of Florida, and they all range from 250 to 320 units. So they're similar sized projects.
In what kind of communities? Because that retirement communities are not the same as where they have 3-bedroom family units where.
Yes, and it does beside each list their jurisdiction: City of Orlando, Ocoee, Hillsborough County.
They're all what we would call a suburban project.
Okay, but
not in
age differential is kind of the thing. So when you have Kissimmee in quote Orlando, that's a working community, typically has larger family units and more cars. I'm trying to understand why your analysis is better than our basis that we've recommended in the past. That's why.
The 2.1.
Yes, sir.
Well, we work. I'm in the Florida division, so we do projects throughout the state of Florida.
Yes, sir.
We find virtually every community has a different code requirement, and so we like to fall back when we can on what worked for us experientially, which is a 1.76. I think we're at 1.81.
Yes.
Yeah, on this. Generally we figure. 1 for a 1-bedroom, 1.5 for a 2 and a 3, and then guest parking in addition. Some jurisdictions, for instance, we don't rent our clubhouse out, so we don't have parties that would generate additional traffic. So we're personally, based on our experience, comfortable with the.
Are you long-term holders?
We are long-term holders. Yes, we are. We own or manage about 20,000 units nationally in 27 states.
And typical sizes for these, well, you've obviously got elevations, you've got sizes and segregation of units. How many 1s, 2s, and 3s are you estimating, just ballpark?
Typically, I'm not sure exactly on this one, 15% 1s, 10% 3s, and in the 50% range on 2s. This project is a little bit unique for us that right now on University, we're building 3-story product. We're adding 4-story product to this. In part because the elevator differentiates us in the market, and we also find that people with access issues, seniors, for instance, prefer an elevator building over a stair building.
And I had 2 other questions. One is, do you have access to surrounding parking? Is there any road access points where they could park if there's not enough inside, or is this all contained?
It's all contained.
And this parking differential will be covered up with buildings or green space?
My understanding, and John might be able to help with that, is that we were trying to increase green space on this particular property being in the watershed area.
Yeah.
That was part of our justification under the allowance in the code.
You think you're pretty accurate in that, or you're guessing?
I'm sorry, guessing on the
green space. Since you have an expert, let's ask him. What do you think? You're paying him. What the heck?
And as I said, Mr. Foley is working on the civil design for this individual parcel, so we'll have him answer those questions for you, Mr. Rutledge.
Good morning. My name's John Foley. I have been sworn. We are working on the final design of this project. I'm not sure I can answer your question specifically. Will this project have a swap off in the parking area towards additional open space on a 1-to-1 ratio? Probably not. But will it exceed the minimum requirement for open space? Probably so. As I said, we're working on the plan, so that's not a calculation that I have in my pocket. I would note that the other thing these folks are offering up is I think we put in 2 or 3 times the minimum requirement for bicycle spaces and some other alternative means of transportation. We were also requested to put in a pedestrian access connection to the south, which will be a future Publix shopping area. So again, I think that's another opportunity for the number of trips from this site to be smaller, the number of parking spaces for the site to be smaller than you might see in some other areas.
And so can you describe to me the other forms of access? I mean, are you talking about golf carts? Are you talking about skateboards?
No, we're talking about a sidewalk connection to the potential shopping center to the south. Really? We're not talking about.
Not a multimodal type design or something
No,
like
sir.
that?
No, sir.
And how about inside the complex? Same thing? No design, just regular sidewalks?
Just regular sidewalks, but extensive sidewalk connection.
And I think the parking and transportation, I think the idea is that fewer people would be driving the trips. You're not asking for a reduction in trips or anything like that, asking for.
Correct, Bill.
So,
It's just that people living there will have the opportunity to do more without their car than at some other location.
Right. Typically, we see the presentation of multiple means of transportation going hand in hand with the reduction in trips. So
We're
that's
not
the
asking
case.
for that.
We're talking
Just parking.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Mr. Jeb.
Is public transportation provided in this area? Does anyone?
I can't answer that question. I don't know of a stop there now. I can tell you that there are significant plans for changes to Lorraine Road in the future, and whether that may become something that's part of that improvement down the road, I'm not sure, but.
I think being a resident of this area, I don't think they've extended bus service, but what I've seen is as they expand with residential and office business uses, bus routes follow soon thereafter.
Exactly.
All right. Very good. Mr. Roth?
What's the highest building? How many feet?
50 feet for the 4-story.
What's current zoning in that area now?
The current zoning?
In Manatee County?
Well, it would depend on each individual project. You can exceed 35 feet if you provide specific elevations. In this area, we are surrounded by Lakewood Ranch properties that are part of multiple DRIs, many of which have additional height approved, some 12 stories.
Well, you're talking about like a hospital. Let me ask you this question. There are other apartments on Lakewood Ranch Boulevard, quite a few. Are any of those, 50 feet?
I have not personally worked on those apartments. I will say there are some that I can think of to the east, if you're talking about east on State Road 70, or to the west on State Road 70. There are some that I believe do exceed 35 feet, and those are in the Lakewood Center DRI, where, as I said, we have the ability to actually go to 12, and that includes residential buildings.
I have one more question. There's no access from this site onto Route 70. Is that correct?
That's correct. From this individual parcel where we're talking about the multifamily, there is no frontage along State Road 70. Their access would be to 59th and to Lorraine Road.
Okay.
And I just wanted to answer the question about transit. At one time, Manatee County had extended transit service to the Lakewood Ranch area in sort of a pilot program. And what they found was they didn't have the ridership that would really support the transit, and that service was discontinued a few years ago.
Can I make one other question? Sure. So I want to clarify my question to you. So when I was asking you about different locations, so your representations are for the Oasis in City of Tampa, is that you use 1.67. When you use the City of Orlando, 1.69. But when you have Bradenton, which is more a municipality like ours, your use is 1.93. And so that was kind of my question. Different communities have different parking requirements. In these cities are different. So I'm just curious, are you sure 1.8 is the right number?
I'm confident that it is. What's important to us, we have, I believe, a 60% release rate, where people sign up again a second time.
60%?
60%. And that, parking, to me, parking is one of the critical, essential elements for people wanting to stay on your property. I actually bought my first house in Bradenton. I lived in Carlton Arms. I come home at night, couldn't find a parking space. That didn't work for real long. And what
that's my point, is infill areas, sometimes they squeeze that parking down because people just aren't as transient and they don't have as much. I just wonder, look, it's your money, you're a smart guy. I'm just saying that even your own presentation tells me that maybe the 1.8 is a little more conservative, but I'm glad you're out there. You could be my neighbor, it'd be great.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to staff presentation now.
Good morning, Jamie Schindewolf again, Planner 1, and I have been sworn. So I just want to go over some general, I will also address the parking a bit. Some general site characteristics. Here you can see the location of the site east of I-75, just north of State Road 70. Some background, this did begin in 2016. It was zoned PDMU, a mixture of residential and commercial uses. They received special approval back then, but special approvals are no longer really applicable, though of course they are still, in the watershed overlay, mixed multiple use, et cetera. And they were approved for a front yard setback reduction as a specific approval at the time. Things have changed a bit. They, have someone interested in building apartments as stated. This is sort of the overall plan. This area, for the most part, is the variety of commercial uses mentioned. This here is not part of the Lorraine Corners project, but is a future Publix. And then we have the area in question that is potentially going to develop as this apartment complex. They are asking for two specific approvals. One is height. My elevation pictures don't look nearly as nice as the ones that you saw for some reason. The ones that the applicant presented are right, with a little more detail on the facade. So one more thing I wanted to point out, the one they're asking for the 50 feet that will have the side facing 59th is also significantly set back from 59th Street. So it's beyond our setback requirements to begin with, so that will help kind of reduce the appearance of the bulk there. As far as parking goes, I pulled these out. These three are ones that are considered at full occupancy. If you search for Oasis Apartments, you will find that they are not in downtown Tampa. They are not in dense urban areas. They are suburban. So staff does believe that this parking reduction is reasonable based on their other market experiences. We asked them to do a parking utilization study, as you can see here. You can see like the one in Brandon, which is a very suburban area. They're only utilizing 73% of their parking, and that's 1.9 spaces per unit. So they're not even using all of their parking that's already at a lower ratio than we require. So staff is very much in support of this. Additionally, with the watershed overlay, we believe it's best to reduce parking. They will absolutely have to adhere to our open space percentage down the line, our requirement. But also, whether it's parking or building, the parking in the watershed is also going to present issues with things like runoff from the cars and things like that. So, I mean, I'm not the environmental person, Rob, but I think there is something to be said for, even if it's still pervious, if it's not parking and drive space, that's impactful and important to protecting our watershed. So staff mostly sees positives to this project. We do need multifamily in the county. Commercial uses have already been approved, so the reduction in commercial is reasonable to keep it a multi-use project. It will lessen watershed impacts. Increased height allows for more units and a smaller footprint. And we don't see any apparent or notable negative aspects. So we recommend approval.
Very good. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, so I appreciate your comment that these, quote, Orlando and Tampa ones are not in the metro area, but I have no idea.
Right.
I have you've not shown me anything that says where they're at. If you tell me where they're at, I can respond. I can respond about Bradenton because it's not a big community, I can say. Brandon, I'm sorry. Brandon.
Close enough.
But my other point is this. This is all information supplied to you from the applicant, correct?
Yes, but that table I showed was included in the staff report.
I understand, but my question is, did you research any of our existing products in the areas that have similar parking to see if they work? Because I know Lakewood Ranch has got a number of new projects out there with certain parking ratios. It'd be interesting to know. I'm not disagreeing with you, but to educate me and have a supportive view of it, it'd be great to know there are 5 or 6 great projects out there, seem to be very successful. They sold, they're operating, they built more next to them. It'd be helpful to know that too, because I appreciate the information they provided, but it seems a little bit skewed to me, and I'm not disagreeing with you about the greenscape. I agree. I'd rather have less parking if we don't need it. Shopping centers are doing this whole thing now. There's a whole matrix of getting rid of parking spaces and adding other things. So I'm all in agreement with that. Having done some apartments, there's not as much value in parking spaces, okay, as a developer and yield. And so I'm just sensitive to that. Is it good for the apartments, or is it just good economic business? I just want to understand that. So I appreciate your thoughts, and those are just some ideas I have. And I'm not against the project in any way. This is a curious statement. It also leads to the next group that comes in and says, oh, I want 1.8. And I think being next to Publix is a big part of saying, yeah, you don't need that because they're not going to park. They don't need as many cars maybe. But again, I feel a little bit like it's not enough information for me, but maybe I'm being pedantic.
Nelson, do you know of any parking studies? No.
Question?
Mr. Roth.
Let's talk about wetlands. Is that a slough, or what do they call it, a slough that runs from north to south, west to east? And where is the 100-year floodplain? Only in one existing wetland?
Abel, been sworn. The wetlands right now, they're not proposing to impact any of the wetlands, and the one area I believe that's not a slough, I believe it's a ditch.
Is what?
Ditch system drain.
It's just a ditch?
Right, agricultural.
100-year floodplain ditch.
Well, I'll let Tom.
Somebody,
about that.
anybody.
It's a ditch to drain the wetland.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Roth, with respect to let's zoom in on this particular area if we can, please. With respect to, first off, I suspect you're talking about this particular system running through here?
Yes, that is the system I'm speaking about.
Okay, if I go back in time to, let's see, 1958. This particular...
I was alive in 58, go ahead.
That particular system that Rob just indicated was a drainage ditch was actually part of the cut fill associated with an old railroad bed. So it wasn't a natural feature, it was a man-made drainage ditch that was parallel to an old railroad bed in the past. With respect to the 100-year floodplain, here we are. With respect to the 100-year floodplain, my fingers are on the 2 parcels that are associated with this proposed apartment complex itself. So the closest 100-year floodplain is off-site within a wetland that's located southeast of the particular project area.
And Mr. Gerstenberger, to clarify, when we talk about floodplain in a wetland, what that is essentially 100-year a ponding effect. Whereas on the previous application, we talked about storm surge, where it's being pushed in. So this is water that hits the ground and runs into the wetland?
Mr. Chair, as you pointed out, this is inundation itself occurring within that wetland. So what's being delineated on the 100-year floodplain maps is that area that's inundated or occupied necessarily within that wetland during the 100-year storm event.
Right, okay, right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about this? Sure. This is a little bit of education. But so, for example, the obligation of the applicant is to retain on site or reduce by 50%. Will the fact that they install that there diminish the success and the life vibrancy of the wetlands as they exist currently?
Commissioner Rutledge, with respect to the wetlands themselves, and it's more of a environmental and a swift mud requirement would be to maintain the hydro period and the hydrology of the existing wetlands. Those particular wetlands would need to be renourished, I would say.
Right.
Utilizing the stormwater facilities of the surrounding developments. So whether it be from the publics, which I know in that case, the publics through the FSP and construction plans and mills, their outfall is into those particular existing wetlands. And then there's some of the other surrounding developments in this area. Unfortunately, this 2017 aerial map doesn't show them, but the other developments that are associated with Lorraine Corners Northeast, they are replenishing they are providing runoff supply into those existing wetlands themselves.
And it's good quality because they're treating it before they get there, so that it's not full of the tire remnants and oil and stuff that we get off parking lots generally, right?
That is correct, and for this particular area being in the Evers Reservoir Watershed Protection Overlay, they would need to reduce their allowable runoff rate by 25% for Evers, and then they would also be providing 150% water quality treatment to meet the overlay requirements.
Got one more.
Mr. Roth.
Let's talk about the railroad track that I think is a sloth or a slough.
We have no sloths in here.
No sloths. Only if you have a slow car. Are they going to vault that? Does that currently have some depth to it? And when they do the parking lot, they will vault the area?
More than likely, they would be open retention ponds, the common open stormwater retention ponds that we would find throughout the county. However, I have not seen anything beyond a GDP level of the apartment complex themselves, but typically for this particular area, it would be an open wet retention pond associated with the stormwater facilities. With respect to the drainage ditches associated with the railroad bed themselves, in conjunction with the overall development of Lorraine Corners Northeast, those particular drainage ditches along that railroad bed have been filled in conjunction with the development over time. So as far as the conveyance, as far as the storage that was attributable to that drainage ditch, it would be accounted for within the stormwater design for each individual project, including this one.
So you mentioned storage. So essentially that's a long linear pond, that the way it operates right now.
It's
because
serving as one, yes.
It's been severed at both ends.
Yes, and that design function would be incorporated into the final site plan construction plan submittals.
Right, you can't ignore the storage in that. You have to incorporate it in any future design.
That is correct.
Very good. Thank you for the clarification.
Would it remain open again?
No, it's essentially a pond that would, like a cow pond on any project that would be filled in.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Roth, obviously with this railroad bed, it continued in both directions for miles on end, and over time it's been severed either by State Road 70, by Lorraine Boulevard, things of that sort. So it's just a matter of accounting for that in the design of the project.
Going away.
Very good. Any additional questions for staff? All right, we're going to go to, is there any discussion, or can we go to closing comments?
Public?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on this matter? Anybody? Anyone? All right, seeing no one come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing and go to, do we have staff closing comments? Okay, nothing. Staff's note.
And Ms. Husing was just advising that there are some corrections they're making to the motion for you that they're going to bring down.
Okay, very good.
Just wanted a couple of things. And Mr. Rutledge, I really appreciate your comments. As I said, I was not the author of that study, but what I will do before the Board of County Commissioners, we will undertake a study of the surrounding apartments. As I said, there are a number of them along Lakewood Ranch Boulevard and along State Road 70 that we can go out and take a look, and we'll certainly do that. The other thing we'll try to provide for you is a more updated aerial. As I said, this is an amendment to a portion of a project. This site is developed. The internal roadway has been developed. All of the stormwater is already on site. The ditch that we discussed, and other surface water that has already been filled. And if you were to go out there today and see the site, you know, it's sort of prepped and ready. There is not stormwater for each individual project, as was stated. There's a master stormwater plan for this project. So the lakes that you see out there now account for all of the projects. So we thank you for your comments, and we'll get you that motion as soon as we can.
Okay, very good, thank you. And while we're waiting for the motion, I have some thoughts. We're going to close the public hearing and go into deliberation, and I'm going to stall a little bit while we're waiting on the motion, the revised motion. But with regard to parking, my thought is that this is a private business, and they know their business. If they miss it, it's going to affect them negatively. It's going to affect their occupancy. So it's an incumbent on them to have a good handle on what their customers are going to require. So the way I feel is that the county's parking calculation is the broadest brush painting of an estimate of parking. We're talking about Manatee County that goes from Palmetto to Lakewood Ranch. You can't say that each of these have the same use, and it wouldn't really be appropriate to have the same parking ratio. So if the applicant feels confident that they have the right number, then I think we have to rely on them. Again, it is their business. If they miss it, it's going to be a financial issue with them. So with regard to that, the county has a mechanism that allows for a reduction if they feel it's warranted. And I think, generally speaking, I would say, okay, good luck with your estimate. Hope you got it. And if you don't, you're going to feel it in your re-rentals or whatever. But or they may come back at a later date and ask for more parking, and then they would have to do a separate stormwater facility and everything that might be necessary. It could affect their open space if they, as was presumed, maybe they're trying to trade off parking for residential. If they're that tight, they could end up in a position where they couldn't do any parking. And again, it would affect their business. I think the process we have in place where they can go in and reduce it is probably something that's very helpful. That's just the way I view it. I know a lot about a lot of different things, but I have to presume that these folks, when they have a financial investment, it's not done without reason.
Can I just comment? The reason, first of all, we're excited about having you come to the community. I think that area out there, this is a great spot to have that because you will get crossover traffic to the Publix and the other amenities that are out there. So I'm all for all that. I think what I want to do is when I get some information, I want to be able to really consume that and understand that for future consideration. So this is one. What you said is maybe true. You get to do whatever you want. It's your money. I said that. But I also think if we think in the long range that we're over parking, like if you look at the Walmart on 70, I was involved in that. They got way too much parking. They don't park on half the thing. Walmart nationally has said they're going to put villages out in the front of their Walmarts because the parking's not used. I'm just curious in parking as a whole. No disrespect to the approach you took, no disrespect to what you've recommended, but I want to know, should we be looking at that and say every time we see it, yeah, they're probably right. So it's not just about you. Every time we come here, we're looking at what's best for the county, and so I have that question for us. And I do think that you got enough information to answer the question generally, but I have a bigger question. It's like, how are the other ones done, and were they better? And if you come to me and say, Paul, I support the staff almost 100%. I almost never vote against them. So I just would like to be able to say with real confidence, well, and by the way, we did 5 others like this. So that's my question about parking. You're right. You make a mistake and have too many 3-bedrooms and you have 3 families in each, that's your problem. But I just do think we ought to be as smart as we can be to consider this for the future. Because once we do it for one, the door's open. I bet you won't forget this, right? I got 1.8, Okay, thanks.
Very good. And to be clear, I'm not disagreeing with Commissioner Rutledge. My point is, I think every project almost needs to do an analysis of their parking to make sure it's sufficient, especially commercial. There are many examples in the county where everything's overparked. So how are we doing on a motion?
Yeah, at some point, we're going to have to take into consideration the growth of Lyft and Uber programs
Yeah.
for these apartment complexes, and parking is going to be a non-issue
Right.
in years to come, so.
Right, it may be.
They're just forethinking the growth of
Yeah,
Lyft.
they're ahead of me, I'm old.
Yeah.
But I guess-
Mr. Rutledge is old, all in favor?
I sit next to Mr. Roth in balance.
Yes, I do have the corrected motion. I do want to point out it was just wrong on the front sheet. The staff report motion is correct, other than the correction to the C.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do want to add one other thing. We did not undertake analyzing the parking regulations as part of the update to the Land Development Code, but that is something that we have on our radar screen to start looking at. And what we do is when, we do make recommendations, because we do see that potentially we are overparked in a lot of areas. I mean, we have made some specific reductions in for instance, on our mini storage parking requirements. We were way over parking those particular uses, and we have changed that. So that is something that we are looking at, and that is why when people come in, we do recommend approval, and we ask them to give us some evidentiary. This particular multifamily builder,
Before
as
you
he
go,
stated, has 20,000
Wait, before you go
units.
to particulars, I closed the public hearing. So let me
Okay, never
open
mind.
I was going to say I can open the public hearing back up. All right, very good. The comments prior were very general and with regard to Manatee County, so we appreciate the consideration. All right, very good. All right, if there's no other discussions, Chair will consider a motion on the application.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move to recommend approval of PDR 1612 GR based on the staff report.
It has to be.
PDMU, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, just for clarification, it'd be the recommended motion as revised in the updated motion recently handed out. And in the updated motion, should refer to LDC section 402.7.D.9 for the height.
So moved.
The attorney said.
Second the clarification.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner DeLesline. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Smock. Any additional discussion? Okay, the chair's going to call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you, Miss Marvin/Grimes.
Hyphen. Hyphen.
Very good.
Guilt by association.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go to the next application, item number 5. Ms. Tusing, can you please read that into the record?
Yes, item number 5 is Z1814, Aaron Guthrie, Diana Valencia, who are the property owners. It's a Guthrie rezone, and this is quasi-judicial. Jamie Schindelwolf is the planner. It's a rezoning of approximately 11.79 acres, which is located at 1912 Fort Hamer Road in Parrish, from planned development residential to the A1 suburban agricultural zoning district. And Jamie, of course, is here, as well as Mr. Guthrie as the applicant.
Okay, very good. And then, again, for the record, have there been any ex parte communications regarding this application?
No, sir.
Seeing nothing disclosed, we're going to go on to the applicant presentation. Mr. Guthrie, are you in the audience? If you would, please come forward, state your name and that you have been sworn in. Then, please, if you would, explain the application. You'll have 15 minutes if you should need it. I don't think you'll need it, but.
Probably not. Good morning. My name is Aaron Guthrie. I have been sworn.
Thank you.
I'm here today because I have an application to rezone 11.7 acres in Parrish, Florida, off of Fort Hamer Road. I am the owner. Basically, I would like to rezone it in order for me to have horses on the property. And that's basically the crux of my application.
Okay. Very good. That's pretty clear, so thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant?
What kind of horses?
All right, I don't think that's required for the.
Oh, it's
the
not
reason,
approved.
no.
My bad.
If it were if they were miniature horses, we'd go through
How many horses?
Quick response. Good morning, Ms. Shinawolf.
Morning
Is this your
again.
third one today?
It is.
Very good. Do you get paid by the application?
The new lady
Bless.
gets
Work
for Grimes.
The new planner gets them all.
All right. Good morning again. Jamie Schindewolf, Planner 1 with Manatee County, and I have been sworn. This is an application for a rezoning from PDR to A1. As stated, around 11 acres. It is, it is located on Fort Hamer Road, again, east of I-75, middle of the county. You can see from the aerial, there's sort of a combination. There's a subdivision to the northeast, but there's also a lot of sort of open land as well. There's a lot of PDR zoning out in this area. It's believed that this was perhaps zoned in with the River Plantation PDR, and it was just, it's not a part of that, but it may have just been designated by the county as PDR at the time. And the future land use for the majority of the area is UF3. I also, can you go back? Want to point out that it is in the coastal planning area, which I think is important when we consider down zoning, if you will, to agriculture, because we really don't want to encourage dense residential development in areas that are prone to coastal hazards. So that's one reason that we think this rezone makes a lot of sense. It will prevent construction of any sort of planned residential in an area prone to coastal hazards and many types of flooding. It is an expansion of the existing A1 to the north. A1 is also, acceptable in the urban fringe future land use, which this site is designated as. The only negative aspect staff sees is the existing suburban residential neighborhoods in the vicinity, but there's significant green space there. A1 doesn't allow for particularly noxious agricultural uses, and I believe that there are requirements for keeping a lot of that green space in place as well as a buffer. So staff ultimately recommends approval of this project.
Are you sure?
Yes, I just wasn't sure it was going to show the slide.
Do we have a rooster on this property?
All right.
A1 doesn't allow for chickens or roosters.
I don't know.
We had that the other day, remember?
I don't know if it was A1 or just
My
straight
neighborhood.
A.
I think that was A.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff other than the rooster question?
The red herring? Oh, no.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. So we're going to go to the public comment portion of the hearing. I have one speaker card, Miss Shirley Bradbury. If you could, please come forward and state your name and that you have been sworn. And you'll have 3 minutes to
Good
make a
morning.
statement.
Yes, I am Shirley Bradbury, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you.
Good morning.
And I'm going to put this map, I don't know whether you have it in front of you.
Yep.
But
It's you can see it on the overhead.
oh, okay. I have been a resident of Manatee County for 62 years, and I've owned my residence at 2004 Fort Hamer Road for approximately 40 years. That is adjacent to the Guthrie property. There is a natural flowing creek that runs down Fort Hamer Road on both sides that comes across my property and into the wetlands. That it flows through property. It flows through Guthrie's properties to the wetland area. Please keep these old oak trees alive. My main concern is the water flow that flows down Fort Hamer Road, passing through the creek, feeding the wetlands. The wetlands is all behind where my property is and part of Mr. Guthrie's property. If this land is filled with houses, how will it affect the natural flow of the water in the creek? This should be your utmost consideration as you discuss this proposal for any developments that's planned in the future. Why not save this development in this area for development into a natural wetland park that could be enjoyed by all of Manatee County residents instead of developing into another residential area which would destroy the natural flow of the water which feeds these beautiful oak trees that make this part of Manatee County so very beautiful and so very naturally beautiful. Please make sure the drainage is correct or you will probably flood my home. Please, I ask you to do not let this opportunity to slip through your hands for the sake of additional housing to the north of Manatee River. I thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. And for clarification, the current zoning allows for residential. What we would do would be taking away that right, so it would be beneficial. So for the record, you're in favor of the rezone to A1?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
If we can keep any more houses being built on the north side of the river where the water is doing so much damage to all of us. Our properties coming down Fort Hamer Road is not sufficient, and it's going to flood us out. It did last year. It will do it again.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to come forward? Anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one else come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing. And do we need any discussion? Okay, we'll go to staff closing comments. Nothing. Applicant closing comments? Waive? Yes, or do you have any additional? Typically it's rebuttal. There's really nothing to rebut, but I'll give you the opportunity to provide any closing comments.
Just wanted to add, no chickens, no roosters. I have 2 young boys, and they want to ride horses. So probably 3-4 horses. That's basically my plan.
Very good.
I originally was going to put a house on the property with all the complications where it is. I decided not to do that. So I want to get some use out of it for my children. Also, the other person mentioned that if you guys were interested in doing a wetland, or I'm sorry, a park or something there, please let me know, because I will sell the property.
Very good. And you could meet with staff. We can't exact anything from the dais. So.
No exactions from the county.
Yeah. All right. Very good.
Question of staff?
Yes, Mr. Roth.
The property that is to the east, which currently has a plethora of trees and probably some wetlands, I believe that is PDR and currently owned by a large developer who has developed River Plantation. Am I correct? So then my next question is, if we make this A1, will that prevent the developer from continuing to do his PDR? Only a realtor would ask.
Mr. Chair, can I opine for just a second?
Sure, please.
Commissioner Roth, with respect to, and I believe you were speaking about this parcel just to the east of the subject rezone parcel. This particular area is associated with the River Plantation subdivision plat. Plat book 45, page 93 is the cover sheet. This particular area is dedicated as part of the subdivision plat as conservation and drainage easement.
Okay.
With respect to any on-site drainage or wetland, jurisdictional wetland areas associated with this subject parcel, I believe Mr. Knable could chime in, but if I'm correct, if there are any areas on-site that are identified as jurisdictional areas, first off, that any development or improvements in that area would have to go through wetland mitigation, wetland avoidance criteria, or things of that sort. And as far as any drainage, any portion of the drainage system from northwest that's drained towards the southeast, county staff would request, if it became possible through a subdivision plat, things of that sort, would require drainage easements for that particular drainage system.
Good. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Gerstenberger. All right, any other comments, discussions, clarifications? Okay, seeing none, Chair will consider a motion. I'll close the public hearing and consider a motion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Based upon staff report evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, and finding the request to be consistent with Manatee County Comprehensive Plan and Manatee County Land Development Code, I move to recommend adoption of Manatee County Zoning Ordinance Z1814 as recommended by staff.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Ron, second. Any discussion? Oh, hearing none, Chair will call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Very good. All right, it's 11:24 right now, or 11:30. We good to power through?
Yes.
Does anybody need a break? Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue with item number 6. Ms. Tusing, can you read item number 6 into the record?
Yes, item number 6 is plant.
And down there, quit asking all day. Oh, yeah, beer.
Maybe go outside and have your conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If
Plan
you-
Development Commercial is 1620 GR NSA Property Holdings LLC Express Storage, which was formerly known as Lakewood Storage. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, and I am the planner for the case.
You can deal people out. They're back there talking.
Okay, if you have a conversation, could you please take it out in the lobby, please? We're trying to wrap it up here. Very good, all right.
Okay, this is an amendment to zoning ordinance PDC 1620G, which is to add a schedule of uses and to amend the general development plan to allow for personal service establishment, such as a barber salon, in addition to the previously approved mini warehouses, self-storage, offices, outdoor storage as a principal use, and a caretaker's residence. This is on a 24.73 acres, and it's located at the southeast corner of State Road 64 East and Lorraine Road. We're also approving a schedule of uses as voluntarily proffered by the applicant and as attached as Exhibit B. It's subject to stipulations as conditions of approval, setting forth findings, providing a legal description, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Rachel Layton is here from ZNS representing the applicant, and I will be representing the county.
Ms. Tusing, why did you specifically use a barber establishment as an example?
Because there's an existing use there now.
Okay.
It's a code enforcement issue.
Okay, all right, thank you. I didn't think it was arbitrary. Very good. All right. Again, clarification, any ex parte communications? Nope. All right, seeing none disclosed, Ms. Layton, how are you doing?
Good morning again.
Good
I
morning.
get to start and I get to end. Very exciting.
You're the
morning.
closer.
I'm the closer. Oh, that's dangerous. Rachel Layton, AICP planner with ZNS Engineering, and I have been sworn. I have a brief presentation. If you could go to the next slide. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, NSA Property Holdings. We're here today seeking a recommendation for approval of a schedule of uses to amend the general development plan and zoning ordinance for PDC 1620 to allow for a personal service establishment in addition to the previously approved mini warehouse use with a caretaker unit, outdoor storage, and leasing office. So I had to go to Google Earth to pull a current current aerial. We came before the board a few years ago, and we added this piece at the north end of the project, fronting State Road 64. With this project, we added a new office building, and then made this the existing office building obsolete. And my client leased it to a barber shop and has code enforcement issue because the zoning ordinance didn't specifically list any other uses besides a mini warehouse, outdoor storage, and the caretaker unit, an accessory office for the use. So part of the Land Development Code requires that if your use is not listed in your zoning ordinance, that the Board of County Commissioners must approve that. So that's Section 324 in the Land Development Code. And staff has been really helpful in helping us navigate the process to add this use in. So again, the existing use and where the barber shop is right here off of Lorraine Road. So here's a photograph of the new storage facility. We really are trying to guide everybody to this location to do their business for the self-storage facility. And on Lorraine Road, you can see here with the awning, that is the former office location, and it's on the outside of the gate. And here is a picture of the front of the salon. So again, we're located on 24 acres of property that's at the southeast corner of State Road 64 and Lorraine Road. We have been in front of the board now 3 times while this project has expanded over the last 20 years or so. All of the site plan approvals have been granted as the project has expanded. Each phase was designed and constructed in accordance with the Land Development Code at the time of approval. Again, when that recent expansion was complete, a new office was constructed fronting State Road 64, and the old office fronting Lorraine Road was no longer used and was vacated. And again, when that old office space became vacant, the space was leased to a barber shop. My client thought plan development commercial just meant any commercial use, and code enforcement has been working with us as we navigate the process, so they're aware that we're going through the process to add this use in. And again, barbershop is defined as a personal service use in the LDC, and this personal service use is designated for the 948 square feet that was the previous office, and it is noted on the plan. So here's the existing parking plan. So here again is Lorraine Road and the entrance to the project and the gate you can see here. And we have 2 spaces right in front of the barber shop, a handicap and a regular parking space, and then another one to the south of the gate right here. So what we're proposing, the LDC requires 1 parking space per 300 square feet or a minimum of 4 parking spaces. So there's currently 3 parking spaces. However, what we did an analysis to see if we could restripe the parking area to accommodate 4 spaces in that existing pavement area, and we can. So what we're proposing is to restripe those parking spaces so that we have a handicap space and 2 spaces, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's no changes to the pavement or the access proposed with this restriping. No additional square footage is added to the overall project. And again, we've worked closely with staff throughout the process. We have a positive staff report, and again, we're just adding the use. The request is consistent with the Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code, and we respectfully request your recommendation for approval of this request, and that concludes my presentation today.
Very good. How many chairs in the barbershop?
Don't know.
If there's
a
one
big parking issue here. We have
well, actually, that's what I was thinking. If there's one chair, you have the barber who has a parking space, the guy getting his hair cut, and the next guy coming in. So
we're over parked for the mini warehouse use because of the regulation. So if we have a problem, we can certainly always accommodate any of the staff interior to the site.
Right now, they're jammed out on the road on whatever that road is.
They're stacking. You got to ask about stacking.
They're stacking out on the
yeah, the getting in to get a haircut. The other question I would have is, can you explain what mechanism is in place that would maybe prevent somebody from doing like a tattoo parlor in a storage facility now, just one of the rental units?
Sure. So with mini warehouse uses, the Land Development Code does have a lot of restrictions. So some of the restrictions are you're not allowed to operate a business inside of a mini warehouse unit. You're not allowed to have an office space inside a mini warehouse unit. So a lot of our mini warehouse units don't offer any power. The light is on a timer for those units that even have lights in them. This facility doesn't have a lot of climate controlled units either. So there's an on-site manager that's there through the day that checks for those things as well. And there's a caretaker's unit there. So that we want to make sure that we have eyes on those facilities. There's no hazardous materials allowed in the lease and in the Land Development Code. So there's a lot of restrictions in the Land Development Code that these clients abide by.
So the distinction is that this is an office that's being used as a barber shop as opposed to
Correct.
one of the storage
It was
units?
correct.
Okay, all right. Just want.
It was a finished, it was already a finished
Yeah,
space. They didn't add any new sinks. Margaret and I did look at that.
I figured this had been thought all the way through, but I figured I'd ask the question just to make sure. I hate to see somebody ask that and have a different answer. So, all right, very good. Any questions for?
Deal with signing, right? There's no barbershop pole out on the way.
I don't.
I don't know that if they've applied or constructed a sign.
I think by.
Only the canopy sign.
All right, very good. Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing
Thank
none,
you.
I guess we can go to staff presentation.
Really?
Okay, I'll have my slideshow. Is this working now, Rachel?
You say sideshow or slideshow?
Slideshow. This is for the express storage, and it's the revision of the general development plan. I'll be brief. Ms. Layton did cover most of the issues. Oops, was that me or you?
That was you.
Okay.
You want me to go back?
Please, I'm not going to touch it.
There you go.
I'm gonna let you do
Just
it.
say next. and I'll-
Next, okay, not now. The request is, as Rachel mentioned, to add a schedule of uses and to amend the general development plan to allow for personal service within the space that was previously used as an office. Next, please. This is the location, which is at the southeast corner of State Road 64 East and Lorraine Road. Next. Again, that's just another site. Here is the actual space that is being utilized for the personal service establishment. Next, please. Again, here's the photograph of the existing use, and this is the parking plan. We did ensure that it meets the parking calculations that are part of our land development code, and it does. The positive aspects is that this site is currently developed and there's no additional construction proposed. The use converts an existing office space as a personal service establishment because the office is no longer needed for the uses. So that at the end of the day, what will happen in this use was you will have a personal service establishment, not part of the mini warehouse, as part of the office. You'll have mini warehouses and self-stores. You'll have office, medical, or professional. And you'll have outdoor storage as a principal use, as well as the caretaker's residence. We recommend approval with the existing stipulations. There are no new proposed stipulations.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for staff? All right, seeing none, we're gonna go to the next phase of the hearing. We're gonna see if there's any public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to come forward?
Skip that.
Anyone at all? Okay, nobody coming forward. We're gonna close public comment and go to any discussion, deliberation. Okay, go to staff closing comments. I have none. Applicant rebuttal? Nothing. Okay. Is there anything else before I close the public hearing? And
We want to hear from traffic?
How come the first slide couldn't be like this?
We need to ask how much they had.
we can draw this out if you want, or we can just wrap it up. So,
We got 11, no, 12.
all right. If there's no meaningful discussion,
Ooh, burn.
we'll go ahead and chair will consider close the public hearing, and chair will consider a motion.
Chair, I'll make the motion. Based upon the staff report, evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, and finding the request to be consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan and the Manatee County Land Development Code as conditioned herein, I move to recommend approval of Manatee County zoning ordinance number PDC 1620 GR, approval of revised general development plan with stipulations A1, B1 through B2, C1 through C2, and D1 as recommended by staff.
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Mr. Delesline. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, the chair is going to call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. And I believe
The
that
presentation was.
I believe that concludes our hearing today. Ms. Roy mentioned that we're going to have a special planning commission or whatever it might be called soon. So you'll be seeing that information come across your
Next
computers.
month, isn't it?
Next month, yeah. So, all right, very good. We're going to go ahead and close the hearing today. And thank you very much.